The reason I think 3D games are better is because that's when I really got into video games, is because they became visually stunning. You could use the visuals as part of the game instead of just the playing old 8-bit ones. I mean, I could watch Final Fantasy playthroughs and think I was watching a movie and still really enjoy it. Unlike when I'm watching the old 8-bit games, I'm like, oh, yay, okay, what's the whole point of this, unless someone's reviewing it. And I really think that when 3D came in, that's when video games got visually stunning, and the visuals really would grab you and start pulling you in and start saying, you need to look at this because this is important. But I think with the old 8-bit ones, you missed a lot of that, and I think a whole ton of gamers came into it when they started doing 3D games.
My turn? So, the way I see it is that 3D actually killed a lot of gamers and games. For example, Kingdom Hearts was a very fandom thing, and then when they went to 3DS and all these 3D things, it basically died. You can tell why, because like most of these games are games that everybody can enjoy, everybody loves, from Zelda, Final Fantasy, all kinds of games, including Kingdom Hearts, were such loved games that everybody would play. And then they went on to handheld, which I'll just get to 3DS instead of going on that rant. And the whole problem is that all of these popular games just die when they get to 3DS. You don't hear about the new Kingdom Hearts games for a reason.
Okay, is that it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any defense?
For the 8 and 16-bit, I agree. It killed a lot of games, and you never hear anything good about the 3DS because it's really cheesy sometimes. Like with a game called Spirit Camera, it comes out of a booklet, but you're stuck in that one page, or indeed 16 pages, and it gets boring. But with the 8-bit and stuff, it's way better. Plus, when you take it back to like the really old pixel games, like
First Final Fantasy games.
Yeah. Or like they're doing with Minecraft these days. Like seriously, even like modern games do it. It's way better than 3D.
Okay.
I'd say it's defense of 2D in general that, in a lot of cases, the transition to 3D resulted in basically soulless animation, limited expressions, cheap animation, whereas something like Disgaea tends to show much more realistic, or at least much more emotive characters than Final Fantasy XII did, or whatever.
Okay.
I think all the arguments by base using the 3DS as the base can't be used, because the question here is not the pop-out 3D in your face. The question is from the 16, to my understanding, is from the 8 and 16 2D screens to the 3D games in generation that started, like the N64 and some of the later in PlayStation games. That's what we're talking about here. So when we get to that, you're talking about earlier, yes, the 2D form is very, very good at showing off character emotion. But the problem here is that there's not enough hardware in these 2D engines to tell a complete story. There are very well-written games that have very compelling stories in the 2D universe, but when you can actually enter the world and look at every detail, take the Mass Effect series for example, there are 6 different cultures fully rendered for you to enjoy. You don't have to think about it. You don't have to fill in any blanks. In Link to the Past, you hear about these other cultures, like the Zora, but you don't even know what they are. And then 3D comes, suddenly now you have the ability to find out what they are. 3D is just simply more immersive, and that's what makes the game. That's what sells it.
I want to talk about the argument that 3D can be more visually appealing. It doesn't matter whether or not, polygons or pixels make it visually appealing, it's the art style. Like going back to the 8 and 16-bit era, Earthbound, Mother 3, those games were visually amazing. They had a very simple art style to where you can tell at a glance what everything was. And on the other side of the coin, the Metal Slug series, where everything is super richly detailed, it just pulls you into its art.
Okay.
I make a counterpoint to the more fleshly developed culture one.
Should we just go up there?
We have to shove them out.
You were invited originally.
Okay.
I'll do it.
Come at me, bro.
Go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to be clear, I respect all forums. I'm just defending my own.
Okay.
I'd say that in many ways, the Mass Effect culture was not actually fleshed out. I don't recall there ever being a female Turian in the entire game series. To show things it's more expensive to create models than it is to to create some pixels. So doing things that aren't directly necessary for the game requires more expense for a 3D game than it would be for a 2D game. And that since books can also be immersive, then 3D is not technically a requirement, since there are still such things as text-based games.
There are, and some of them are very good. I myself am a fan of the visual novel genre. It's a great genre. It does what it needs. It presents the art to you. But here's the question. Random people in the crowd right now, raise your hands, favorite 2D game. Go.
That has to be
Minecraft, 2D. Minecraft is 3D.
Pokemon.
Oh, right.
Pokemon? Which one?
The most red.
Red? Okay.
Pokemon Mystery Dungeon.
Mystery Dungeon? Okay.
Pokemon Sapphire.
Pokemon?
Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Phoenix Wright.
Phoenix Wright? Okay. With the exception... One more.
Yoshi's Island.
Okay.
Final Fantasy 1.
Okay, with the exception of, in my opinion, remember that. I'm not claiming to be the master word, just in my opinion. Out of all the examples given, the only one of those examples with a credible story is Phoenix Wright. There are games that you can play for the sheer point of playing. There's tons of them, and those are fun. But the point that is made here, you were talking about there's no such thing as a female Turian. There are in the comics, but I'm not going to use that as an argument. When you play Mass Effect, play Mass Effect, you walk into the Citadel, you see races of every kind. Ever open up the Codex?
Yes.
How detailed is it?
Actually, a bit iffy.
Very detailed. It tells you every little detail of how every small object works. In Mass Effect 1, for those of you who haven't played, the weapon you fire has a limited ammo. You might think, that's not realistic at all. But then the game tells you that how the gun works is that it's actually just a block that shaves off a little sliver each time. So it's not infinite, you just don't have to worry about reloading. And it's believable because this game takes place 100 years in the future. That's what the object does. You can walk into this world and not only see it, you can believe it. You can't believe Pokemon. As much as you would like. As much as we all would like. I would love to have a Glaceon. I'm not going to lie.
In Mystery Dungeon, the basis of the storyline is you, the main character, you were traveled back in time and somehow in a way you got turned into a Pokemon. So you started as a human. So
Still fun, but going back to the end point here, the reason 3D is genuinely not better, because there's no such thing as a better game. 3D is simply just better at telling the story. And that's the core component of games today.
Okay, who votes 3D?
I do have one more comment to make.
Oh, sure.
About the 3D versus 2D, whether 2D was easier to make. It's actually easier to do 3D models because you have to make the textures, make the skeleton, make the body and everything, but you only have to do that once. After that, animating it's just as simple as moving the parts of the skeleton on the body. Whereas with 2D, with 2D, I mean you can make the most detailed sprite ever, but then when you want to move it another frame, you have to redraw everything. It's way easier, way cheaper to make 3D than it is in 2D.
Okay, who votes 3D? Okay.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to his argument that Fallout was a very popular series with 3 in New Vegas, but coming to the earlier games, no one's pretty much ever heard about it, and making it 3D made it popular because it's a wide open, vast land where you can do anything you want and choose whatever you want.
Or maybe you were just a kid.
Okay, last one, then we'll vote. No offense.
No, I hear all these things about 3D and all that, but how I perceive it is most 3D games actually come from 2D series. I mean, if you look at Golden Sun 1 and 2, they're definitely Golden Sun and Fallout 1 and 2. They're definitely, to my perspective, the creators of 3D games. Is these games are what base the idea, so you could have these great games.
Man, think about this. When you play the Golden Sun series, you remember Bits and Pieces? I bet you you remember the exact picture of the world before you when you walked out of Vault 21.
Yes.
You remember every little detail because it's all there for you.
Okay. Who votes 3D? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, 16, 8 and 16-bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, goes to 3D.